it. You'll get it. Okay, cool. Now, I'm assuming that this will save, right? You there? Display. Display capture. What do you mean? Over here? Yeah. So, like, gotcha. So, you can still see everything. All you're seeing is the two things, right? Okay, cool. Okay, cool. I will. Maybe I should just lecture and get this over with. Yeah. Since that took, oh, I don't know, about 20 minutes to get it figured out, but all I had to do was hit the button at the top that says go live. Anyway, okay. All right. Well, maybe I'll just go ahead and go through this. Okay. All right. Thanks. Bye. Okay. So we're gonna just go with this because it only took me and Michael about 20 minutes. It's because it's my fault. Anyway, capture top moments. Close. Anyway. Okay. So you're getting to see these two things. I'm hoping. I'm assuming we're seeing the live chat over here, which nobody really. I don't. They don't need to do the whole thing. We can move this over here a little bit like this so it's bigger. Anyway, okay. So now if I hit present, ooh, that's not. I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. Okay. Okay. So yesterday we did the cardiovascular system. We did the heart. Okay. So as a review, closed system. It's a it's a pressurized system. Heart pumps the blood, and we have the piping, which is the vessels that carry the blood to all the different places. Right, the heart pumps, the vessels carry it, circulate it, and then we have the blood, which carries the oxygen and the wastes in and out of the body. So I'm going to move this a little bit so I can make sure that we're seeing this. Anyway, okay, yeah. So we do that. Then we talked about we have that cellular exchange of oxygen and waste and all that stuff. We talked about how this refreshing and changing of the fluid is necessary to prevent up the waste and all that good stuff. We talked about how the heart is located. It's in the thorax. It's kind of right behind your sternum, right? It's kind of tilted and it's pointing down to the left hip. The posterior superior portion of it, right, the back portion of it is kind of pointing to your right shoulder blade, and then the apex is pointed down towards your left hip, and it rests kind of on the diaphragm. It's about the size of your fist, and it weighs less than a pound. All right, so if you sit there and you look at your fist, it's really not that big. All right, and so yeah, we went through all of that, and as we look at this diagram here, oh, I like this because you can see my cursor, right? Can you see my cursor? Someone say something. Can you see my cursor as I move this around like this? Do do do. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Okay, nobody's saying anything. Great, I probably have nobody here. Anyway, all right. So I'm gonna just assume that you can see my cursor. So as we look at these vessels, we have the blue ones and we have the red ones. Now, most of the time, we will say that red vessels are arteries and blue vessels are veins. Okay, and we talked about the big thing that we have to remember is that arteries, by definition, carry blood away from the heart, and veins, by definition, carry blood towards the heart. All right, so as we see that, as we have that, there are going to be two exceptions, and we will learn those. All right, but for the most part, blue is representing, so where my cursor is right here, that is representing the superior, well, hold on, I gotta think about that. The superior vena cava, right? And that is where the blood's going to come from, the nipples up, basically. We'll talk about that here in a minute, right? So let's keep going. We talked about pericardium. We talked about the difference between the visceral and the parietal, right? Visceral being on the heart itself, parietal being on the fluid, the space around the heart, and then we have the serous fluid in between, which keeps the friction down. Okay. The epicardium is that outside layer, right? That is the visceral pericardium. Okay. The epicardium is the visceral pericardium. The myocardium, that is the contracting layer. Okay. And then the endocardium is an endothelial lining which reduces friction, right? We do not want a rock or a pebble in the stream. We don't want that. We don't want turbulence. We don't want to create bubbles. Well, it's not going to create a bubble, but like with a rock in a stream, you create turbulence and things are going to. We don't want platelets to be activated. We don't want vessels to be damaged. We want nice, smooth, uninterrupted flow. Okay. So we are going to learn most of these things, and there talks about. But if you look here down at the bottom here, how that heart, it's kind of shaped like a heart, but not really. Okay. But it's wider at the top than it is the bottom, and so we got this apex here. We're going to learn about how this portion here is the left ventricle, and then the right ventricle, and the right atrium, and the left atrium. Okay. So we're going to see all that. And so we're going to have our superior vena cava come in to the right atrium from the top, our inferior vena cava come in from the bottom. We're going to have our pulmonary arteries. Now, these pulmonary arteries, right, they are, look at this one, right? So this is an artery and it's blue. All right, so everything on the right side is pre-oxygenated. Everything on the left side is post-oxygenated, because where this is going, where this pulmonary artery is going to the lungs, pulmonary, right? So it is carrying blood away from the heart, therefore it's an artery, and it's going to the lungs, so it's not yet been oxygenated. That is why it's blue. Okay? That's your trick question, right? You have an artery here that is carrying deoxygenated blood. Every other artery around, all of those, they carry stuff that is oxygenated, except for this one here. All right. So as we look at this, we're going to look at, you're going to know most of these terms as we go. Okay. But that diagram you're going to want to know. So if we take the heart and we do a cross-section view of it, right? If we take a cross-section and we open that baby up, we're going to see that this is the inside of that heart. Here's our apex. Here's our left ventricle. Here's our right ventricle. Here's our right atrium. Here's our left atrium. Here is where that pulmonary artery, there's a valve there, right? It's going to go out towards the lungs. It's going to come back in on the pulmonary veins, right? Veins, pulmonary veins, the carrying blood to the heart, but it's going to be oxygenated. They're going to dump into that left, travel through, travel out the aorta. Okay, and we will learn that as we go. Okay, we'll learn the pattern of flow. Okay, we're going to learn what pectinate muscles are. We're going to learn what chordae tendineae are. We're going to learn what papillary muscles are. We're going to learn about this trabeculae carneae. We're going to learn all that. Okay, so as we keep going through this and you start looking at these diagrams, they will start to make more and more sense to you. Okay? So when we talk about the four chambers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Atrium, ventricle, atrium, ventricle. When we talk about the four chambers, the atria are the receiving chambers, right? So we have a receiving chamber here and a receiving chamber here, all right? They're receiving. They're going to bring blood into the heart, hold it until it gets ready to go into the ventricles, right? So the right atrium receives from the body while the left atrium receives from the lungs. Okay? They are thin walled, right? And so they don't need a ton of great pumping power. Okay? So let's look at this real quick. I'm kind of getting in my head of myself, but since you are looking at the screen and not at me, we can kind of whatever. So these walls here are really relatively thin. Okay? This wall here is relatively thin. But then you look down here into the ventricles, way different story. And we're going to talk about why that's way thicker than this. Anyway, all right? So we have right atrium receives the body, from the body, right? So this right atrium gets blood from the superior and the inferior vena cava. All right, so that's deoxygenated blood from the body. Okay, that's going to collect here. That's going to end up here. That's going to end up being pumped out through here, which is going to go to the lungs. Okay, so all this right side is deoxygenated blood. Okay, so when we talk about the right atrium, it receives blood from the body. The left atrium receives it from the lungs, right? So as we look at this, we have our left atrium. We see this here, right? Our pulmonary veins are bringing oxygenated blood back to the right atrium, to the right ventricle to be pumped out the aorta to the body, okay? So the left, so the thin wall, right? There's an auricle here. That it's this flap that increases atrial volume. So I don't know if this is a good way to explain this or not, but I guess one of the ways that I would look at it is you've had a sorry, I got a yawn. Ugh. Let me drink my coffee. Oh, crap. You have had a carry-on bag, right? And you have gone or you have a suitcase, and you know you have that extra zipper that you can unzip so that you can fit about, I don't know, 50 more t-shirts in, whatever. It's just, but it expands the volume that you can carry in your suitcase. So in a way, I look at those auricles as kind of like that. It helps when needed to be able to, hey, leave my phone alone. It helps. There's a little bit of a delay, so my obnoxious comments will be delayed. And so that helps expand the volume when it needs it. Okay? So there's this foramen ovale. It's a structure that bypasses the fetal lungs. Okay? So if you think about it, we have that space. Sorry, did you just hear that? Anyway, we have this space between the in the septal wall so that it can bypass the lungs, right? We don't need to go we don't have to go through the lungs, so we can bypass the right ventricle. Okay, so hold on. So blood usually comes in through here, in the right atrium, through the right ventricle, into this pulmonary artery, to the lungs to be oxygenated, and comes back through it. Well, the fact is that when you're in utero, you do not need to go to the lungs. So it can go from here to here, straight across to here, and then out the body. Okay, that is this foramen ovale. It's a structure that bypasses the fetal lungs. Okay, so it closes up when the infant starts breathing air. All right, and then it becomes this remnant, this fossa ovalis, this dip in the wall, and ligament arterius to close that off. Okay, so as soon as you take your first breath, that thing starts to close. All right, but we'll find as we go, sometimes they don't, and then that's an issue. Okay. So we're also going to talk here about the chambers of the heart. All right, the four chambers. So we did the atria, right? They're collecting thin walls. They're not pumping. They're going to pump a little bit to get stuff to there, but they're not going to have to pump any distance. So then we get to the ventricles, right? Those are the discharging chambers. They are going to pump. Okay? And so we're going to have our right ventricle, which goes to the lungs, right? So if we look at this, our right ventricle is going to go to the lungs, right? It's going to go to the, this is the pulmonary artery, carrying blood away to the lungs. And then we have our left ventricle, which goes to the body, all right? We have thick muscular walls here. We need pumping power. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Yep. And then see you Friday, probably. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, cool. Okay, so right ventricle goes to the lungs. Okay, so if you think about, and then the left ventricle goes to the body, right? So if we look at this, the right ventricle is thin, right? So if you think about how far does that have to pump? I don't know, a foot, maybe, right? Because the heart is nestled in between the lungs, right? So the lungs should be all around here and lungs here, and it's all close in there, right? So we should see that, okay? And so the right ventricle does not have to pump that far. So therefore, we don't need this huge wall. Now, the left ventricle, as we looked at, right, it goes to the body, right? So this left ventricle has to be big because it has to be able to pump blood all the way to your big toe, right? So how many feet is that? For some of us, it's more. For others of us, like myself, it's less. But regardless, it still has to pump at a greater distance, which means you're going to have more muscle to make that a stronger contraction. All right, so left ventricle pumps to the entire body. So that's why you're going to see that it is bigger. Okay? So the 4 chambers of the heart, atria, they receive from the body, the left receives from the lungs. Okay? Thin-walled, they don't need great pumping power. We have that zipper, which is, it's not really a zipper, okay? It's a flap, okay? That will allow us to increase the volume in the atria if we need to. And we talked about how these structures close up when we take our first breath, okay? Ventricles, those are the pumping, the discharging chambers. The right one goes to the lungs, the left one goes to the body. The left one's bigger because it has to pump to the entire body. The right ventricle only has to go to the lungs. Okay, so hold on, let me see the heart. Let me see if I can find something real quick here. Let's go to here. Let's go to drive. Let's go down to. That's not what I want. Oh, I need to go to anatomy. So let me see here. At some point here, I think
but it's kind of difficult.
Oh wow!
so. You're gonna see the lungs pump up
You
here.
don't have gloves, you're
Okay,
probably
you're gonna
gonna
see
Look at the color.
Steven Smithers backing up there in the corner like a scared limb. Anyway,
Okay, so this is if the pig was still alive.
So
the
watch,
pig would
he's
be
gonna hold
facing
this up here in a
direction.
second.
His
So
head
there's
would
the
be-
lungs.
He'd be on all fours.
Okay.
So this is the rib cage going out.
And we're
If
not
it
gonna
was
watch this
a
whole video, but I just
human,
wanna show you
here
this.
the human would be standing upright. So
So,
this would be like
there
if
it
it
is,
was in
so that you can
going
imagine
out,
it's kinda like
okay?
the lungs
We
standing
can
up.
see then how the heart is nestled and
See, now
surrounded
look,
by the lung.
stop right there. The heart sits right in there. Okay? So when we talk about the right atrium, the right ventricle does not have to pump that far. You're talking about pumping them out the pulmonary into the lungs and through these lungs. So really the distance is not that great. Okay? And so that's why that right side is not near as thick. So let's
When we
see.
talk about the lobes of the lungs,
So
here's
there,
a lobe.
see, you can see
So
right in
on
there.
the
Okay,
left
so anyway, we'll use that video another time. Okay, so When we talk about the septum divides the heart into right and left halves. All right. So if we, oh crap, come on. So if we go, we look here, we have our septum. The septum divides the heart into right and left halves. Okay. Remember, we are looking at this anatomically. So when we're looking at someone from straight on, their right is going to be over here, their left is going to be over here. So right and left, the septum divides the right and left halves. The superior vena cava, the superior vena cava returns the blood to the heart from the head, the shoulders, and the arms. All right, so I've kind of told the kids, your shoulders up, so your nipples up, or whatever, right? So that includes your arms, that includes your head, right? So that's the superior vena cava. So this superior vena cava drains all the upper body from your shoulders, nipples up, right? Right? So then when we talk about the inferior vena cava, returns the blood heart from the rest of the body. So there's the inferior vena cava that's coming up in here that's going to dump into this right atrium. That is coming from the rest of the body. So from the shoulders down, nipples down. All right? Okay. We have our pulmonary trunk, right? It's the blood vessel out of the right ventricle to the pulmonary arteries. So if we look at this, the pulmonary trunk, all right, let's go here. This will probably say it. Pulmonary trunk comes out of the right ventricle to the pulmonary arteries. See that? Okay. So there you go. There's that. Pulmonary arteries to the lungs, right? So the pulmonary arteries are going to the lungs, and the pulmonary veins are coming back to the left side of the heart, right? So the aorta is the largest artery of the body. All right, so let me go back through this, right? So here we go. We have our right atrium. We have our right ventricle. We have our left atrium. We have our left ventricle, apex, and then through here we're going to have our septum, which divides the right and the left halves. We're going to have our pulmonary trunk, which comes off the right ventricle. It's going to pump blood into this and send it into the pulmonary arteries. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Okay, it's carrying it away from the heart to the lungs. Okay, they're going to get oxygenated in the lungs, which are all surrounding this whole area out here, right? And they're going to come back in on the pulmonary veins. Now, this blood will be oxygenated. It will be coming in on pulmonary veins. Veins are things that carry blood to the heart. Okay, so that's going to dump into the left ventricle. Okay, and then the left ventricle is going to pump the blood into the biggest artery of the body, which is the aorta, right here. Big old sucker right there. It's going to take a lot of pressure. Because that pressure is going to be pretty high coming right out through this aortic arch here, right? And it's going to supply the rest of the body with oxygenated blood. Things are going to go up off this thing all over the place, and it's going to get branched out, and it's going to be able to deliver it all the way down to your feet. Okay? I'm trying to decide how long I should do this. Let's wait on the valves. Okay? So, I think what we'll do is we'll stop there. I want you to just review. If you have any questions, email me, and then I will try to answer them on here. I think I've got this figured out. I have to hit go live in order for me to broadcast, and I'm pretty sure that this will save. Okay, and I'm going to probably do it around this noon time every day. Okay, so that you kind of know, but as long as it saves, I think it says it'll save for like 12 hours, so you don't have a lot of time to get this done. You're just going to have to get her done. Okay, so anyway, that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to try and get a web camera so you can see my lovely face. But I don't really know why you need to. I think this works better, to be honest with you. So we're going to stop today. If you have any questions, you need to let me know. And we'll go from there. If for whatever reason I have to close my office, then what I might do is do it a little earlier in the morning so that we don't have to sit around all day waiting for this, because everybody's got other things they want to do probably at lunchtime. But anyway, email me questions. Michael, you did great. Thanks for helping me out with this. I think we can make this work. Chris, it's not that I don't like Discord. It's just the fact that this was a stretch enough. So anyway, I know you're probably going to tell me it was easier and it'd be cooler and whatever else. And anyway, I'm just not going to be able to. I think I can just do this for now. And then if I'm at home, I probably won't have the slides and I will just have my face, which I don't know how I feel about that. Anyway, so anyway, I hope that everything is going well. I hope that you're not wanting to kill your siblings as of yet. Just work hard, finish well, and we will continue this on tomorrow. And if I decide that if I get bored and I'm just going to start lecturing, I may just try to lecture anytime, and then you can catch it whenever you want. The thing about it is, though, I do like to be able for you guys to ask questions, although nobody asked questions today. But feel free to do that, but there's a few minute delay on this. Anyway, I'll quit rambling. Have a good day. Thanks.